Veronica Sterling stood outside the glass doors of Marcus Sterling Boutique, her hands trembling as she gripped the golden handle. 2 years. 2 years since she'd last stepped foot in this place. 2 years since the car accident that took her only son and left her empire feeling hollow. The luxury fashion district buzzed around her, but all she could hear was her own heartbeat. This wasn't supposed to be hard. Walk in, check the inventory, meet with the realtor tomorrow, sell the building. Clean, simple, done. But as those doors opened, something was wrong. Have you ever discovered a family secret that shattered everything you believed? Because that's exactly what happened next. What would you do if you walked into your dead son's store and found a child calling him daddy? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. The boutique should have been empty, silent. Just expensive mannequins and designer clothes waiting for buyers who would never come. Instead, soft sobbing echoed from the back of the store. A child's cry mixed with deeper, quieter sobs. Veronica's breath caught. Security should have cleared everyone out hours ago. She followed the sound past racks of her son's final collection, pieces that would never see a runway. Past the fitting rooms where celebrities once tried on custom gowns. Past the reception desk where Marcus used to sketch new designs during slow afternoons. The crying grew louder. In a private lounge, behind frosted glass doors that only family members were supposed to access, she found them. A young black man, maybe 21, sitting cross-legged on the marble floor. In his lap, a little girl with curly hair and tear-stained cheeks. She couldn't have been older than 5. But what made Veronica's blood run cold wasn't the strangers in her son's private space. It was what the child was holding. A hand-stitched plush bear, navy blue velvet with silver buttons. The same bear Marcus used to make for sick children at the hospital. One-of-a-kind pieces he crafted himself, never mass-produced, never sold. The janitor looked up, panic flashing across his face. Mrs. Sterling, I can explain. How did you get that? Veronica's voice cracked. The little girl looked up with eyes that seemed too old for her face. Too sad, too knowing. And then she whispered the words that would change everything. Your son used to tuck me in at night. Veronica dropped her purse. The sound echoed through the boutique like a gunshot. Before we go deeper into this story, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Hit that subscribe button if you're ready to find out what happens when a family's biggest secret gets exposed. Because what Veronica discovered next would destroy everything she thought she knew about her son's life. Let me take you back to understand who Veronica Sterling really was before that moment shattered her world. Veronica Sterling didn't just run a fashion empire. She was the empire. At 62, she controlled a billion-dollar company that dressed Hollywood's elite and politicians' wives. Her name appeared on Forbes lists. Her opinions moved stock prices. Her approval could make or break careers. She built it all from nothing. A girl from Detroit who learned to sew in her grandmother's basement, who saved every penny to buy her first sewing machine, who worked 18-hour days to prove that a woman could dominate an industry run by men. But her greatest achievement wasn't the company. It was Marcus. Marcus Sterling was supposed to be her legacy. Brilliant, creative, kind-hearted, everything she'd hoped for in a son. He graduated top of his class from fashion design school, spoke 3 languages, and could sketch a dress that would make angels weep. The boutique was his baby, his vision, his chance to prove he was more than just the boss's son. For 3 years, Marcus Sterling Boutique was the hottest destination in the city. Celebrities flew in from LA just to see his latest collections. Fashion magazines featured his designs on their covers. The waiting list for his custom pieces stretched 6 months. Veronica was proud. Finally, someone who understood her vision. Someone who could carry on the Sterling name with honor. Then came that November night 2 years ago. The phone call at 2 a.m. The police officer's voice, careful and professional. Mrs. Sterling, there's been an accident. Marcus was driving home from a late meeting. Ran on the roads. His car skidded into a tree. Dead on impact. The doctor said he didn't suffer. That was supposed to be a comfort. After the funeral, Veronica couldn't bring herself to enter the boutique. She kept paying the rent, kept the lights on, kept the skeleton staff to maintain the space. But she never went back. Her board of directors called it emotional attachment to a failing asset. The boutique wasn't making money anymore. Without Marcus's creative vision, it was just an expensive storefront bleeding cash. Tomorrow, she was scheduled to meet with commercial real estate agents. The plan was simple: sell the building, liquidate the inventory, close this chapter of her life forever. That's why she came today. One last look, one final goodbye. The boutique was supposed to be empty. The cleaning crew had strict instructions: clear out personal items, box up the inventory, leave the space ready for showing. But as Veronica stood outside those glass doors, she could hear something that shouldn't have been there. The sound of a child crying. And that changed everything. Veronica's designer heels clicked against the marble floor as she moved deeper into the boutique. Each step echoed in the empty space, mixing with the soft sobbing that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. The main showroom looked exactly as Marcus had left it 2 years ago. Mannequins still wore his final collection, flowing evening gowns in deep emerald and midnight blue. Jewelry displays sparkled under track lighting. Everything perfect, untouched, frozen in time. But someone was here, someone who shouldn't be. "Hello," Veronica called out, her voice sharper than intended. "The store is closed. You need to leave." The crying stopped. Silence stretched through the boutique like a hell breath. Then, from the back of the store, came a man's voice. Quiet, careful. "We're sorry, ma'am. We'll go." Veronica followed the voice past the fitting rooms, past Marcus's design desk where sketches still lay scattered across the surface. The private lounge was meant for VIP clients and family only. Marcus had designed it himself. Comfortable chairs, soft lighting, a place where celebrities could relax between fittings. Through the frosted glass doors, she could see 2 figures. Veronica pushed open the doors and stepped inside. The young man sitting on the floor was clearly the janitor. His uniform gave him away: dark pants, company polo shirt, name tag that read Elijah. But what struck her wasn't his presence. It was how he held the child. Protective, gentle, like she belonged there. The little girl couldn't have been more than 5 years old. She had beautiful curly hair pulled back in neat braids, and she wore a yellow dress that looked homemade but well cared for. Her small hands clutched something against her chest. "Sir, this is a private area," Veronica said, trying to keep her voice steady. "You shouldn't be here with." Then she saw what the child was holding. The bear was unmistakable. Navy blue velvet, perfectly stitched, with silver buttons for eyes. Marcus's signature bear. He'd started making them during his first year of design school, gifts for children's hospitals. Each one was unique, handcrafted, never duplicated. Veronica had watched him make dozens of them over the years. She'd seen him spend hours on the tiny details, the way he'd stitch the smile, the care he'd take with the button placement, the little notes he'd tuck inside each one. "Where did you get that?" The words came out harder than she intended. Elijah's arms tightened around the child. "Ma'am, we were just..." I asked where she got that bear. The little girl looked up at her with eyes that seemed too serious for someone so young. Eyes that held a sadness no child should carry. "My daddy made it for me," she whispered. Veronica's heart stopped. "Your daddy?" The child nodded, hugging the bear tighter. "He said it would keep me safe when he couldn't be there." "Sweetheart," Veronica's voice cracked. "What was your daddy's name?" The little girl smiled for the first time, a smile that made Veronica's knees weak. "Marcus. Marcus Sterling." Veronica grabbed the doorframe to keep from falling as the child's words echoed in the space between them. "Marcus Sterling. Her son. This child's father." "That's impossible," she whispered. But even as she said it, she was studying the little girl's face. The shape of her eyes, the way she tilted her head when she was thinking. The same gesture Marcus had made since he was a toddler. "Ma'am, please," Elijah said, standing up carefully with the child still in his arms. "Let me explain. Put her down." Veronica's voice was ice cold. "Put her down right now." "I can't do that." "You can and you will. I don't know what game you're playing, but using a child too." "He's not playing a game." The little girl's voice was small but firm. "Uncle Elijah takes care of me. He makes me peanut butter sandwiches and reads me stories and takes me to the park on Sundays." "Uncle Elijah." Veronica's mind raced. This wasn't some random janitor with a random child. This was planned, connected, real. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Veronica asked, her voice softer now. "Zoe. Zoe Williams." Williams, not Sterling. But the bear in her arms was definitely Marcus's work. Veronica could see the imperfections that made it perfect. The slightly uneven stitching he'd never quite mastered, the way the left ear sat just a bit higher than the right. "Zoe," Veronica said carefully, "where is your mommy?" The child's face fell. She had to go away, but she's coming back. She promised. Elijah shifted uncomfortably. "Mrs. Sterling, this isn't the right place for..." "Don't tell me what's right." Veronica's voice cut through the air like a blade. "If this child is claiming to be my son's daughter, then I need to know everything. Right now." She moved closer, and Zoe didn't flinch. Instead, she held out the bear. "Want to see him?" Daddy put something special inside. With shaking hands, Veronica took the bear. It was heavier than she expected, worn from being loved. Along the back seam, she found a small zipper Marcus had hidden in the design. Inside was a photograph. Marcus, laughing, holding a baby with the same curly hair and serious eyes. Behind them, a woman with dark skin and a beautiful smile, her arms wrapped around Marcus's shoulders. They looked like a family. They looked happy. On the back of the photo, in Marcus's handwriting, "My girls, the reason I wake up every morning." Veronica's hands trembled as she stared at the image. This wasn't some old photo from college. Marcus was wearing the watch she'd given him for his 28th birthday. The watch he'd been wearing when he died. "How long?" she whispered. 3 years, Elijah said quietly. He loved them both, more than anything. Veronica looked at this child, this beautiful, impossible child, and saw her son smile looking back at her. "Why didn't he tell me?" Elijah Williams looked at the woman who controlled his future and made a decision that would change everything. "Because he knew what your family would do to me," he said quietly. Veronica's head snapped up. "What does that mean?" "It means," Elijah said, setting Zoe down gently, "that I used to be more than just a janitor in this building." He walked to the supply closet in the corner of the lounge, a space Veronica had never paid attention to before. Inside, behind the cleaning supplies and equipment, he pulled out a worn leather portfolio. 2 years ago, I was a fashion designer, just graduated from Parsons. I had a scholarship, graduated top of my class, had a job lined up at your company's design department. Veronica frowned. "I don't remember hiring anyone named Williams." "You didn't?" "Because I never made it to my first day." Elijah opened the portfolio, revealing sketches that made Veronica's breath catch. Beautiful, innovative designs that rivaled anything her top designers had created. Clean lines, bold colors, perfect proportions. "These are good," she admitted. "They were good enough to get me noticed. Good enough to get me invited to your nephew's engagement party. Good enough to catch the attention of some very powerful people who didn't like seeing a young black man from the projects carrying a designer portfolio." The engagement party. Veronica remembered it clearly. A lavish celebration for her sister's son, David Sterling. Half the fashion industry had been there. "What happened?" "Your nephew's fiancée, Rebecca, had a few too many drinks. She started making comments about my presence at the party. Said I looked like I was casing the joint for jewelry to steal. Said people like me didn't belong in spaces like that." Veronica's stomach dropped. She remembered Rebecca, beautiful, wealthy, and unfortunately, loud when she drank. "I tried to ignore it," Elijah continued. "But when she started getting physical, pushing me toward the door, I defended myself. Gently, I just stepped back and raised my hands. And someone's phone camera caught the exact moment I stepped away from her. The photo made it look like I was being aggressive, like I was threatening her." Elijah pulled out a newspaper clipping. The headline read, "Fashion Party Violence. Young man arrested after threatening wealthy socialite." By the time the truth came out, it was too late. The arrest was on my record. Your company's HR department had already been contacted. Industry contacts were warned about the dangerous young man who couldn't control his temper. But if you were innocent, ma'am, with respect, when has that ever mattered? Veronica stared at the sketches, at the newspaper clipping, at this young man who should have been working in her design studio instead of cleaning her floors. Marcus tried to help me, Elijah said quietly. He's the one who got me this job when no one else would hire me. He's the one who introduced me to my sister. Your sister? Amelia, Zoe's mother. Veronica felt the ground shift beneath her feet as the pieces started falling into place. David, she whispered. My nephew David was behind this. Not just him, Elijah said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. Your sister Margaret knew. She was there when Rebecca made those accusations. She could have stopped it. Margaret wouldn't. She watched it happen. She watched them destroy my life because she was more worried about her son's reputation than the truth. Veronica's mind raced back to that night. The engagement party had been Margaret's crowning achievement. Her son marrying into one of the oldest families in the city. A merger of old money and new power. What exactly did Margaret do? She made the calls. The next morning, she contacted your HR department personally. Told them there had been an incident with a potential employee. Said I was unstable and potentially dangerous. Elijah pulled out his phone, scrolling through old messages. Marcus showed me the email chain. He'd been fighting for me, trying to convince the hiring committee that the arrest was bogus. But when his own aunt called to warn them, he handed her the phone. The email was from Margaret Sterling's personal account, sent to the head of Human Resources. Mr. Johnson, I must warn you about the young man you're considering for the design position. Elijah Williams was arrested last night for threatening behavior at a private event. While charges may be dropped, I cannot in good conscience recommend someone with such poor judgment for a position representing our family's company. Veronica's hands shook as she read. Her own sister had sabotaged an innocent man's career to protect her precious son's image. There's more, Elijah continued. After the HR rejection, Margaret made sure word spread through the industry. She called designers, boutique owners, anyone who might hire me. Always the same story, troubled young man, anger issues, not the right fit for our clientele. But Marcus hired you anyway, as a janitor. It was the only job he could create without going through HR. Minimum wage, night shift, no benefits. But it was work. Veronica looked at this young man who should have been creating beautiful clothes, who should have been building a career, who instead was mopping floors because her family had destroyed his future. He felt guilty, Elijah said. Marcus knew what his family had done to me. He tried to make up for it the only way he could, by introducing you to his girlfriend. Amelia was working at the hospital where Marcus donated his bears. She was a nurse in the pediatric ward. When she met me, she saw the designs in my portfolio and told Marcus he was crazy for letting me waste away as a janitor. Zoe had been quiet during this conversation, coloring in a book she'd pulled from Elijah's bag. Now she looked up. Mama used to say Uncle Elijah made the prettiest drawings. She said he was going to be famous someday. What happened to her, Zoe? Veronica asked gently. The little girl's face clouded over. She got sick, really sick. The doctor said she needed to go to a special hospital far away. Elijah's jaw tightened. That's what we told her. The truth is more complicated. The truth hit Veronica like a physical blow. Marcus was in love with a black woman, and you all made him hide it, she said, the words tasting bitter in her mouth. It wasn't that simple, Elijah replied, but his voice said otherwise. He reached into his portfolio again, pulling out a folder that looked like it had been handled thousands of times. Inside were photos, letters, and documents that painted a picture of a secret life. They met at the children's hospital. Marcus was delivering bears, and Amelia was working a double shift in the cancer ward. She was exhausted, stressed, dealing with a little boy who wouldn't stop crying. Veronica looked at the first photo. Marcus, grinning widely, holding a tiny patient while Amelia adjusted the child's fore. Both of them looked genuinely happy. Marcus walked over and started making the bear talk to the kid. Different voices, silly jokes, the whole thing. Within 5 minutes, the boy was laughing. Amelia said she'd never seen anything like it. When did they start dating? 6 months later. Marcus kept finding excuses to visit the hospital. Always had a new bear to deliver. Always needed to check on the kids. Amelia saw right through it. The next photo showed them at a small restaurant, Marcus's hand covering Amelia's across the table. They looked like any young couple in love. For a year, they were careful. Marcus would pick her up after work, take her to little places outside the city where nobody knew them. They'd spend weekends at her apartment, cooking together, watching movies. What changed? She got pregnant. Veronica's breath caught, and Marcus wanted to marry her. He was over the moon. I'd never seen him so happy. He started talking about introducing her to the family, making it official. He bought a ring. Elijah showed her another photo. Marcus and Amelia at what looked like a small celebration, her belly just starting to show, both of them glowing with joy. But when he told his father's been dead for 10 years, Veronica interrupted. Not his father figure. Your brother-in-law, Richard, Margaret's husband, Richard Sterling. The man who'd helped raise Marcus after Veronica's husband died. The man Marcus had looked up to as a mentor. What did Richard say? He said the family had worked too hard to build their reputation to have it tainted by an interracial relationship. Said Marcus was thinking with his heart instead of his head. Said a black girlfriend and a mixed-race baby would hurt the company's image with certain clients. That's disgusting. It gets worse. When Marcus refused to break up with Amelia, Richard went to Margaret. Together, they came up with a plan. Veronica felt sick. What kind of plan? They couldn't control Marcus directly, but they could control the people around him. Starting with me. The engagement party. The engagement party was 3 weeks after Marcus told them about Amelia. The whole thing was a setup. Rebecca didn't randomly decide to cause trouble. She was told to. Told to what? To create a scene that would get me arrested. To make it look like Marcus's judgment was so poor that he'd befriended a dangerous criminal. To prove that his association with black people was already causing problems. Zoe looked up from her coloring. Is that why Mama cried sometimes? Because people were mean to her. Elijah's voice was gentle. Yes, sweetheart. That's why. Veronica knelt down to Zoe's level, her heart breaking for this child who'd lost so much. Sweetheart, where's your mama now? She's getting better, Zoe said with the confidence only a child could have. Uncle Elijah says she's at a special place where doctors are helping her feel good again. Over Zoe's head, Elijah shook his head slightly. Not here, not now. Why don't you show Mrs. Sterling your pictures while I get you a snack? Elijah suggested, pulling a juice box from his bag. As Zoe focused on her coloring book, Elijah moved closer to Veronica, his voice dropping to a whisper. Amelia disappeared 3 months ago. What do you mean, disappeared? I mean, she was here one day, gone the next. No note, no explanation, no forwarding address. She just vanished. Veronica's blood ran cold. People don't just vanish. They do when they're threatened. Threatened by who? I don't know. But 2 weeks before she disappeared, Amelia started acting different. Scared. She'd check the locks on her apartment 3 times before bed. She'd look over her shoulder when we walked down the street. She stopped letting Zoe play outside. Did she say what was wrong? She said someone had been asking questions about her. About Marcus. About Zoe. People at the hospital, people in her neighborhood, people she didn't recognize. Veronica's mind raced. What kind of questions? Personal stuff. How long she'd been with Marcus. Whether they were married. Whether he'd left her any money. Whether she had documents proving Zoe was his daughter. Documents. Birth certificate with Marcus's name on it. Photos of them together. Letters he'd written to Zoe. Things that proved they were a family. And then she just left. I came to pick up Zoe for their usual Saturday at the park. Amelia's apartment was empty. Cleaned out. Like she'd never lived there. Veronica studied Zoe, who was humming quietly while she colored. This child had no idea her mother might never come back. What did you do? I panicked. I called the police, but they said adults are allowed to leave if they want to. No crime had been committed. I called the hospital, but they said she quit her job 2 days earlier. Just walked out in the middle of her shift. But she left Zoe with you. She trusted me. The night before she disappeared, she brought Zoe to my apartment. Said she might need to go away for a while. Asked if I could watch her. I thought she meant a weekend. That was 3 months ago. 3 months of me lying to this baby. Telling her mama's coming back when I don't even know if she's alive. Veronica's voice was barely a whisper. What do you think happened to her? I think someone from your family got tired of waiting for the problem to solve itself. The words hit Veronica like a punch to the gut. That's a serious accusation, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Is it? Elijah pulled out his phone again. 3 weeks after Amelia disappeared, I got a call from corporate security. They wanted to search my locker. Search your locker for what? They said there had been reports of missing inventory, expensive fabrics, designer accessories, things that only someone with access to the building could have taken. Veronica frowned. Did they find anything? They found a silk scarf, a Hermes scarf worth $3,000, tucked behind my cleaning supplies. A scarf I'd never seen before in my life. But you're saying someone planted it. I'm saying that a 21-year-old janitor making minimum wage doesn't own $3,000 scarves. And I'm saying that the security footage from the night they claim I stole, it mysteriously had a glitch. Elijah showed her a document from the security company. Technical malfunction. Camera was down for exactly 4 hours. Just long enough for someone to plant evidence without being recorded. Who handled the investigation? Your head of security, a man named Patterson. He was very thorough. Asked me lots of questions about Amelia, about Marcus, about what I knew about their relationship. What did you tell him? Nothing. I told him I was just a janitor, but he didn't believe me. He said he knew I was closer to Marcus than I was letting on. Said he knew about the situation with the girl. Veronica's stomach churned. He knew about Zoe. He knew enough. He asked if I had any idea where Amelia had gone. Said it was important for company security that they locate her. Said Marcus had been involved in some financial irregularities before he died. Financial irregularities? Money missing from company accounts. Unauthorized purchases. Payments to people who weren't supposed to be on the payroll. That's impossible. Marcus was careful with money. Was he? Or was he secretly supporting a girlfriend and child that your family didn't know about? The implications hit Veronica like a wave. If Marcus had been taking money from the company to support Amelia and Zoe, it would explain why someone might want to find them. It would also explain why someone might want to silence them. What happened after they found the scarf? I was fired. Immediately. No hearing, no appeal, no severance. Just a security guard escorting me out of the building with a warning that if I ever came back, they'd call the police. But you're here now. I'm here because I still have a key to the service entrance. A key I kept because I knew someday I might need to get back in here to find answers. Answers about what? About what really happened to Marcus. About why Amelia disappeared. About why a little girl's life has been turned upside down by people who were supposed to protect her. Veronica looked at Zoe, who was still coloring peacefully, unaware that her entire world was built on lies and secrets. What do you want from me? I want you to help me find out the truth. Before it's too late. Veronica Sterling had built a billion-dollar empire by trusting her instincts. And right now, every instinct was screaming that something was very wrong. The night Marcus died, she said slowly. Where exactly did the accident happen? Highway 15, about 10 miles from downtown. He was driving back from a late meeting. What meeting? Elijah hesitated. I don't know. But Amelia said he'd been having a lot of late meetings those last few weeks. Always stressed when he got home, always checking his phone. Did he say who he was meeting with? Family. That's all he told her. Said he was trying to work something out with family. Veronica's blood ran cold. The last conversation she'd had with Marcus had been 3 days before he died. He called her office, said he needed to talk to her about something important. She'd been busy, told him they'd talk after the weekend. They never got the chance. Elijah, I need you to think carefully. Did Marcus ever mention anything about money? About accounts or payments? Or anything financial? He mentioned setting up something for Zoe. Said he wanted to make sure she'd be taken care of if anything happened to him. A trust fund, something like that. He said he'd been working with lawyers, trying to make it legal and official. But he was worried about how the family would react. What kind of lawyers? I don't know. But he carried a briefcase to those late meetings. Always the same brown leather briefcase with combination locks. Veronica remembered that briefcase. Marcus had bought it for his first day at the company 5 years ago. He'd been so proud of it. Said it made him feel like a real businessman. Where is that briefcase now? I assumed it was with his personal effects. The stuff the police returned after the accident. There was no briefcase. Elijah's head snapped up. What? The police returned his wallet, his phone, his watch. There was no briefcase. But he had it with him. Amelia saw him leave with it that night. Then where is it? They stared at each other as the implications sank in. If Marcus had been carrying legal documents about Zoe's trust fund, if he'd been meeting with family members about making his secret daughter official, if he'd been carrying proof of his relationship with Amelia, we need to see the accident report, Veronica said. I tried. They said I wasn't family. I am family. 20 minutes later, Veronica was on the phone with the police department, her voice carrying the authority of someone who was used to getting what she wanted. I need to speak with Detective Morrison about my son's accident report. Yes, I'll hold. While she waited, Elijah played with Zoe, building towers with blocks he'd found in the lounge. Normal family activities in a completely abnormal situation. Mrs. Sterling? The detective's voice was professional but tired. I can have a copy of the report sent to you, but I have to warn you, the case was closed months ago. Was there a briefcase in the car? A briefcase? No, ma'am. No briefcase in the inventory. Are you sure? Positive. Why do you ask? Veronica looked at Elijah, who was listening intently. Because my son never went anywhere without it. 3 days later, Veronica sat in Private Investigator Maria Santos' office, staring at photographs that made her sick to her stomach. You were right to be suspicious, Maria said, sliding another manila folder across the desk. The CCTV footage didn't just disappear. It was deleted on purpose, and I found out who paid for it. Veronica's hands shook as she opened the folder. Inside were bank records, payment receipts, and a name that made her blood run cold. David Sterling, her nephew. $50,000, Maria continued. Paid to the security company's IT department 2 days after Marcus's death. The payment came from David's personal account. But why would David want to? Veronica stopped. She already knew the answer. Marcus's will. With Marcus dead and no known heirs, David would inherit everything. The boutique, the trust funds, the future leadership of Sterling Fashion. Everything. Except Marcus did have an heir. Zoe. There's more, Maria said. I tracked down the hospital where Amelia Williams was taken after she disappeared. She didn't leave voluntarily, Mrs. Sterling. She was committed. Committed. Someone filed papers claiming she was mentally unstable, dangerous to herself and her child. The papers were signed by a family member. Another photograph. Commitment papers with David Sterling's signature at the bottom. He had her locked away, Veronica whispered. 3 weeks before Marcus died. She's been in Riverside Mental Health Facility for 2 years. The doctors say there's nothing wrong with her. Never was. But someone's been paying the bills to keep her there. Veronica felt the room spinning. The same someone who deleted the footage. Your nephew has been very busy, Mrs. Sterling. He destroyed Elijah's career, had Amelia committed, and when Marcus started asking too many questions, he killed him. The words hung in the air like poison. Veronica thought about the police report. Marcus accident. Ran on the roads. But what if it wasn't an accident? I can't prove murder, Maria said carefully. But I can prove everything else. The payments, the cover-up, the false commitment. That's enough to get Amelia released and put David in prison. Veronica stared at the evidence. Her nephew, her sister's son, the boy she'd helped raise after his father died. The young man she'd groomed to take over the company someday. He destroyed an innocent family to steal her son's inheritance. There's one more thing, Maria said. David knows I've been investigating. My sources say he's planning to have Zoe removed from Elijah's care. Permanently. What does that mean? It means he's going to claim Elijah is unfit. Have child services take her away. Put her in foster care where she can't claim her inheritance. Veronica stood up so fast her chair fell over. When? Tomorrow morning. The social worker is already scheduled. Not if I can stop it. Mrs. Sterling, be careful. David has already killed once. If he thinks you're a threat, let him try. Veronica's voice was pure steel. I've spent 2 years mourning my son. Now I'm going to make sure his daughter gets the justice he never had. She walked toward the door, then stopped. And Maria? Call the police. It's time David Sterling learned what happens when you mess with my family. Veronica found David in his office at Sterling Fashion headquarters, sitting behind Marcus's old desk like he owned the place, which legally he did. Aunt Veronica, David smiled, but his eyes were cold. I wasn't expecting you. I bet you weren't. She closed the door behind her and locked it. We need to talk. About what? Veronica threw the photographs on the desk. Bank records, hospital commitment papers, deleted security footage receipts. David's face went pale. About the fact that you're a murderer. I don't know what you're talking about. $50,000, David. That's what you paid to delete the footage from the night Marcus died. Did you think I wouldn't find out? David's hands were shaking now. Marcus died in a car accident. Everyone knows that. Marcus died because he was asking too many questions about what happened to Amelia Williams. He was getting close to the truth about how you destroyed Elijah's career and had an innocent woman committed to steal his inheritance. You can't prove any of that. Actually, I can. Veronica sat down across from him. The police are already on their way to arrest you. But first, I want to hear you say it. I want to hear you admit what you did to my son. David stood up, pacing behind the desk. You don't understand. Marcus was ruining everything. He was going to throw away the family legacy for some woman and her kid. He was going to give them money that belonged to us, money that belonged to him, money that built this company, money that your grandfather and father and you worked for decades to earn. And Marcus was going to hand it over to strangers. They weren't strangers. They were his family. They were a mistake. David slammed his hand on the desk. A moment of weakness that would have destroyed everything we built. So you decided to destroy them instead. I tried to handle it quietly. I thought if I got rid of the woman, if I discredited the brother, Marcus would come to his senses. But he wouldn't let it go. He kept digging, kept asking questions, kept threatening to expose everything. So you killed him. David's face crumpled. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. I just wanted to scare him. I followed him that night, tried to get him to pull over so we could talk. But he was driving too fast, and when I bumped his car, you ran him off the road. It was an accident. I never meant for him to die. But when he did, you made sure it looked like he was driving alone. You deleted the footage that would have shown your car. You let everyone believe it was just a tragic accident. I had to protect the family. You destroyed this family. Veronica's voice was shaking with rage. You killed my son. You stole his daughter's inheritance. You ruined innocent people's lives. And I'd do it again. David's voice was cold now, because this company is more important than one man's selfish choices. The sound of sirens filled the air outside. David looked toward the window, then back at Veronica. You have no idea what you've done, he said. Without me, this company will fall apart. The shareholders will panic. Stock prices will crash. You'll lose everything. Maybe, but I'll still have my granddaughter. And my conscience. That's more than you'll ever have. The police knocked on the door. David Sterling, you're under arrest for the murder of Marcus Sterling. 2 weeks later, Veronica Sterling stood at a podium in front of 50 reporters, about to destroy her own reputation to save her family's soul. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, I called this press conference to tell you the truth about my son's death and to publicly apologize for the injustices committed by my family. The cameras flashed as she took a deep breath. Marcus Sterling was murdered by my nephew, David Sterling, who has confessed to the crime and is now in police custody. But David's actions were part of a larger pattern of racism and cruelty that I allowed to happen in my company. She could hear the reporters' pens scratching against paper, phones buzzing with breaking news alerts. 2 years ago, a young man named Elijah Williams was falsely accused of threatening behavior at a family event. He was blacklisted from the fashion industry because of lies told by members of my family. Today, I'm here to clear his name and offer him the position he should have had from the beginning. In the audience, Elijah sat with Zoe on his lap, both of them still adjusting to their new reality. 3 days ago, Amelia had been released from the mental health facility. The doctors confirmed what everyone suspected. She was never sick. She'd been imprisoned for loving the wrong man. My son Marcus Sterling was in love with Amelia Williams, and they had a daughter together named Zoe. Marcus kept this relationship secret because he was afraid of how my family would react. His fear was justified, as my nephew's actions proved. Veronica's voice cracked. I failed my son by creating an environment where he felt he couldn't share his happiness with me. I failed Amelia Williams by allowing her to be falsely committed. I failed Elijah Williams by not stopping his career from being destroyed. And I failed my granddaughter by not being there when she needed me most. She looked directly at the camera. Effective immediately, I'm implementing new policies at Sterling Fashion. Elijah Williams will be our new head designer. The Marcus Sterling Foundation will provide scholarships for young designers from underrepresented communities. And 50% of my personal wealth will be donated to organizations fighting racial injustice. The reporters erupted with questions, but Veronica held up her hand. I know this confession will hurt my company's stock price. I know it will damage my reputation. But my son died because I created a family culture where love was less important than image, where acceptance was conditional on approval. I won't make that mistake again. She stepped away from the podium and walked toward her real family, Elijah, Amelia, and Zoe, who was holding her father's bear. Are you ready to go home? Veronica asked Zoe. Is it really home now? The little girl asked. Yes, sweetheart. We're all going home together. For the first time in 2 years, Veronica Sterling felt like she could breathe again. The truth had set them all free. 6 months later, the Sterling family mansion felt alive again. Veronica stood in the kitchen, watching Amelia teach Zoe how to make pancakes, while Elijah sketched designs at the breakfast table. It was Saturday morning, and for the first time in years, the house was filled with laughter. Grandma Veronica, Zoe called out, "Look, I made a heart." The pancake was definitely not heart-shaped, but Veronica smiled anyway. "It's perfect, sweetheart." Amelia had been hesitant at first. 2 years of forced medication and isolation had left her cautious about trusting anyone, especially the family that had put her there. But slowly, carefully, she'd started to heal. "I never blamed you," she told Veronica during one of their long conversations. "Marcus used to say you were just scared of losing control, that you'd come around eventually. He was kinder than I deserved," Veronica had replied. Now, watching Amelia flip pancakes with the same gentle confidence Marcus had shown in everything he did, Veronica could see why her son had fallen in love. "The spring collection is almost ready," Elijah said, holding up his latest sketches. "I think Marcus would have liked these." The designs were beautiful, bold, innovative, but with a warmth that had been missing from Sterling Fashion for years. Since taking over as head designer, Elijah had breathed new life into the company. Sales were up, critics were raving, and young designers were fighting for internships. "He would have loved them," Veronica said, "and he would have been proud of you." "I'm proud of all of us," Amelia said, sitting down with a plate of pancakes. "We survived something that should have destroyed us." "We did more than survive," Veronica said. "We became a family." It wasn't the family she planned for. It wasn't the family she'd imagined when Marcus was young and full of dreams. But it was the family Marcus had chosen, and that made it perfect. "Grandma," Zoe said, syrup dripping from her chin. "Can we go to Daddy's store today?" The boutique had reopened 3 months ago, featuring Elijah's designs alongside a memorial to Marcus. It was busy again, full of customers who came not just for the clothes, but for the story behind them. "Of course we can," Veronica said. "But first, we need to clean up this kitchen." "I'll help," Zoe said, already reaching for a dish rag. As they worked together, Veronica realized something. Marcus had been right to keep his family secret, not because he was ashamed, but because he was protecting something precious. Love that was worth fighting for, a family that was worth saving, and a future that was worth building together. 1 year later, Veronica Sterling stood in the same boutique where everything had changed, but nothing looked the same. The walls displayed Elijah's newest collection, designs that had been featured in Vogue and worn by celebrities on red carpets. The memorial corner for Marcus had become a shrine visited by fashion students and industry professionals alike. But the biggest change was behind the counter, where Amelia Williams worked as the boutique's manager, helping customers while keeping an eye on Zoe, who was drawing in her coloring book. "Business is good," Amelia said, showing Veronica the daily sales reports. Better than it's been in years. It's not just business, Veronica replied. It's family business. There's a difference. The front door chimed, and Elijah walked in carrying coffee and wearing a smile that never seemed to leave his face anymore. How are my favorite girls? He asked, kissing Amelia's cheek and ruffling Zoe's hair. Uncle Elijah, Zoe said, looking up from her drawing, I made a picture of our family. The drawing showed 4 figures holding hands in front of a building. A tall woman with gray hair, a young man with kind eyes, a woman with curly hair, and a small girl in the middle. Above them, a figure with wings watched from a cloud. That's Daddy, Zoe explained, pointing to the angel. He's happy we're all together now. Veronica felt tears in her eyes. Yes, sweetheart, he's very happy. As the day wound down and they prepared to close the boutique, Veronica realized something important. She'd spent her whole life building a legacy based on success, money, and reputation. But Marcus had built something better, a legacy based on love, truth, and second chances. The Sterling name would continue, but it would mean something different now. It would mean fighting for justice, even when it was inconvenient. It would mean choosing family over profit. It would mean never again putting image above humanity. Ready to go home? Elijah asked, turning off the lights. Ready, Veronica said, taking Zoe's hand. As they walked out together, Veronica looked back at the boutique one last time. Marcus's vision had survived. His family had found each other. His love had conquered the hate that almost destroyed them all. Sometimes the most powerful legacy isn't what you build for yourself. It's what you rebuild after everything falls apart. And sometimes the family you choose is stronger than the family you're born into. That's the lesson Veronica Sterling learned too late, but not too late to matter. What would you do if you discovered your family's biggest secret? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that will challenge everything you think you know about love, loyalty, and the price of truth. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.